Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is Ray Piskule. He is a member of the Glenview Art League. Ray, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Tell us a little bit how you started writing the Children of Mischief.
Well, I've had it on sitting on the back burner for several years. Then finally, when I retired, I'm a former business owner. Now I have the time, so I just sat down and I started, writing. And I thought about, well, what could I write about? And I figured, well, the one thing I really know about is my own story when we were little kids. And I was inspired by actually watching TV, and I was watching a religious program, and the pastor said, oh, go out there, and if you have something you really want to do, just do it. And that inspired me. So a day later...
What a great encouragement.
Yes, yeah. So I sat down and I started, writing the book. And I really didn't have a lot of... I didn't prepare for it. There was no first draft. There was no outline, nothing like that. I just had little notes written on scratch paper or maybe palm of my hand or a napkin. And then I put everything together. And once I got the chapters established, and as I was typing each chapter, the ideas just began to flow, and I just kept going with it.
Well, from reading the book,
Yeah.
I see that you're a very visual thinker.
Right.
The stories are very action-packed and just fast-paced. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. It seems like you were part of a alfalfa and spanky gang.
Oh, we definitely were. We were wild kids. We were untamed. And we got in a lot of trouble. And basically, it all started out with pilfering pennies from my grandfather's money that he used for playing cards with his old cronies. And a lot of times we would get caught, and he would start chasing us down the streets. Never did catch up with us. That's how fast we were.
Yes.
And we'd run down to the school which we attended, which was Custer School. And in the back, in the playground, they had a shack that was like a concession stand where they sold candy, penny candy. So with the money that we took from my grandfather, we'd spend it all on penny candy.
I like the memories you had about your grandfather or Gramps.
Yes.
He was shouting at you in Czech.
Yes, he was. Yes.
And you wrote down some of that in the book, and I think that gives it a real flavor of that language.
Oh, that's
Did you look it up? I mean, now as an
well,
adult,
no,
it's easier
we were exposed to Czech growing up. That's all my parents, because my grandfather lived downstairs, we lived upstairs from my grandfather. And that's how my parents communicated with my grandfather. And my grandparents were also immigrants, so they communicated with them in Czech. So through osmosis, we just picked it up.
Do you still remember or not so much?
Well, I didn't totally lose contact with, the Czech language. Because every year I attend like a Czech festival.
So you do. That's wonderful.
Yeah, sure.
Because
yeah.
many times, what children are exposed to, whatever language, they tend to just lose that touch with them.
Yes. Well, it's part of my subculture, Now, my sister and brother, they would totally refuse to speak Czech or have anything to do with, the Czech environment.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate because I think it's so much part of who we are.
Exactly. You should know your roots,
So back to your gang, right?
Yes.
Which character would you say you were in your gang? Were you Alfalfa? Were you Spanky?
I guess I would say I was buckwheat.
Really? Why? That's a funny one to pick.
Well, because I was the youngest, and I was always taken advantage of, and every time an experiment came along, my brother would try it out on me. Like one time he wanted to experiment what would happen if a human drank turpentine.
So, that sounds deadly.
So he went in the garage, and my father had a big bottle of turpentine that he used for paint thinner, because back then everything was
Right, everybody.
oil
Yeah.
paint,
Right.
lead,
Lead-based, yes.
paint, lead-based paint. And it was a thinner, and he used to clean his brushes with it and everything. And so my brother took it out of the garage, and he had me try it out. And he said, "Here, Ray, take a swig of this and let me know what you think," which I did,
What happened?
Well, I was gagging and choking, as one would expect. But I didn't die. I'm still here.
Did your parents have to,
Right.
save you? I mean,
Yeah. Well, I've learned that back in the day, parents, if a child caught the flu or something like that and had a lot of phlegm on their chest, they would give the child turpentine.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Then they would cough up the phlegm.
right.
It was
As
like
an
one of those old home
expectorant.
remedies.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's true.
And in fact, every spring my grandfather would give us sulfur with a tablespoon of sulfur mixed with molasses as a spring tonic to thin our blood for summer is approaching.
Yes.
And,
so that sounds very interesting, because
Yeah.
that's a lot of those things we probably heard about in the 19th century, when tonics and
Well, yes.
elixirs.
Well,
right?
this was in the late
I know,
1940s,
sorry.
early 50s.
Don't mean to. That's not I'm not trying to insult you, but that was just we do have a lot of those roots before we reach for the Walgreen solution, right?
Oh, yeah. At one time, you could buy, in the pharmacy, sulfur right off the shelf.
Yes,
You
yeah.
can't anymore these days.
Right.
You know.
And so your book is full of these funny anecdotes.
Right.
You did not have any kind of outline, and you didn't have an editor.
No.
And looking back, what would you say?
I would say get an editor.
Okay, tell us your learning
Well,
experience.
not for grammar, because in today's writing, grammar is not important at all. People just write the way they feel, the way they speak,
Yes, that's why I feel
using
your book
colloquial
is,
language,
yes.
But get an editor for typos, spelling errors, if nothing else,
What happened
And-
on your first?
Well, I didn't have an editor, and first draft, we went with it. We sent it to the public. Actually, it's a self-published book.
Yes.
And on CreateSpace, which is a platform through Amazon, where they publish the book for you on demand. So we just went with it, and we submitted it, and they published it, and we got the first copy, and we read it for the first time.
Must be very
We do
exciting.
everything backwards, And my wife alone found like 29 printing errors, typos, spelling errors. So I thought, oh my God. And the first few days after it hit Amazon, we sold like 12 copies.
So it's already out.
Yeah, with all these mistakes in there. Okay, so then we corrected it, resubmitted it. I haven't sold a copy since. So I probably should have left it alone. We'd probably, sell 1 million copies, But it's not important. I didn't write the book, to make money on.
Yeah.
It was just a whim. It was just something I always wanted to do. I always have that been there, done that attitude.
Well, I think you also have energy. You have creative energy. You want to release, and I see
Right,
that you
right.
just go for it, right? I
Yes.
like that's a good message for our viewers. And
Right.
you mentioned that you wrote this to maybe perhaps your family, maybe your grandchildren or your niece and nephew might find this very
yes, exactly, yes.
very rewarding to read about their
yes,
perhaps
yeah.
grandparents
Right, yeah,
or
my cousin,
great grandparents.
Yeah, my cousin read it, I should say, and a few other relatives, and they just got a big bang out of it.
Yeah.
You know,
Is there like a Czech culture society or something like that I might be very interested in reading about or keeping a collection of immigrant stories?
I really haven't given it much thought.
Yeah, but maybe there's somewhere
yeah,
we can
Yeah.
ask some
Yes.
questions.
It's not that deeply steeped in the Czech culture, I
no,
don't think,
but
but it's there.
Yes, but it's nice to have
You know.
any kind of
Right.
recording, right? Because
Exactly,
you
sure.
see, there's,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Midway Village Museum, but they have a little section for different cultures, for let's say
Oh.
Swedes, for Greeks,
Right.
or Polish who were started in that village, in that city, and
Right.
that could be your story. Could be also that little representative of Czech family, right?
I
That
suppose.
people, or else people just always think our past is always English, German, and that's it.
Right,
So,
exactly, right, yeah.
I mean, I'm always interested in any bit of little Chinese American immigrant story back in the
Sure.
18th century, something
Right.
that was very little remnant of.
Right, yes. And I'm interested in many cultures,
Yeah.
you know.
And
'Cause-
go on.
well, I mean, we watch, a lot of PBS, and sometimes they have about the Italian heritage, Chinese, and whatnot. It's interesting.
And you did the artwork for your book as
Yes,
well.
right.
And did you do your art before the story, or did you do the story first and then the art?
Well, the story came first, and then I did the illustrations to match the story. So basically, that was it, the reasoning for that.
And did you find the providing the illustration, was it frustrating? Was it fun? Or did you find that it was easy to do because you're just trying to recall your experience?
Oh, for me, these were sketches that we scanned and, put in the book. It was no big deal for me. It was fun.
Have you done illustrations for other people, for books? Does it say books?
No.
Not
No.
yet.
Well, I don't know if I have any interest in it,
Okay.
because I'm an artist. I paint, as you know.
Yes.
And that's my main interest right now, to paint for the sake of painting.
Is Children of Mischief your first book?
Well, it's the first published book. It's not actually the first book that I've written. Some time ago, I've written another book, the manuscript, and it included, I would say, about over 150, maybe close to 200 illustrations, hand-drawn illustrations.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
That's
with
a graphic novel, isn't it? That what they call it now?
No, it was actually, it was a guidebook for graphic design as it applies to signage.
Really?
Right,
Wow.
yeah.
And how to?
And a how-to book, basically, kind of, right. An instructional book. Because with the how-to book, you would think of, how to hold the brush, how to twirl it in your fingers as you're,
Yes.
drawing
Making the-
curved letters like S's or O's or that.
Right.
That would be a how-to book. This was more concentrated on design.
And the layout.
And layout and design, exactly. Well, I submitted it to two publishers that turned it down because they had other interests at the time. They were working on other publications, and they thought, perhaps maybe later. So I sent it to a third publisher, Dover Press or Dover Books. They held on to it for about 3 years, and from the very beginning they said they're very interested. And it was sitting on the editor's desk for about 3 years.
Oh my goodness.
And I'd call up once a year.
Mm-hmm.
How's the book coming along? Oh, it's still on my desk. I have several other books to get to, manuscripts, before I get to yours. But bear in mind, we're still interested. There was some material in there that was becoming dated, because that's when the shift to computerized
Right.
signage
Yes.
came into play, right? So I figured they're holding on to it too long. Some of the material is, getting dated. So I withdrew it. I pulled it out. And after I did that, it was sitting on a shelf for about 3 years after that, just collecting dust. And we had a storage problem. I needed space. So I took the manuscript, artwork and all, it was about that thick, and I just threw it in the dumpster. And onto something else. So
there's a lot to be learned from that experience. I'm sure you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, if you're gonna submit to a publisher, and you get turned down, just persevere. Just keep going. Send it to another publisher, until it gets published.
Yeah, keep it moving.
Keep it moving. Don't give up. You know. But
that's a great message for our viewers.
right, exactly. Sure. Okay.
And do you have another book that you're planning to do?
Well, since probably the mid-1980s, I was kind of kicking around in my mind, writing and illustrating a children's book. But the idea hasn't come to me yet. What am I going to write about? You have to have a story, right? And I just don't have a story. But if a story comes to me, I'll probably do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have many stories, it seems. Did you have to edit out some stories? Or
in the book?
Yes, in the book.
Oh,
Did you
yes.
feel like
I
you
edited out a whole chapter. I mean, the book would have been over 300 pages. But I was kind of getting off topic a little bit because I wanted to concentrate on our early years living in Berwyn, which was a Czech enclave, as I pointed out in the book. And I didn't want to go much beyond that, you know. But there is one thing I left out of the book I wish I would have included.
What's that?
After we moved to North Riverside, western suburb, first grade, I was the mischievous kid in the classroom. And I would talk while the teacher's trying to stand in front of the room and teach us something, and I would be talking to the person sitting next to me. The teacher put me out in the hall on a large, tall stool with a dunce cap on my head. It was a tall white cone, and vertically running from the top down, it said D-U-N-C-E, dunce.
Yes.
And there I am sitting in the hallway as kids are passing by back and forth, you know. It was so embarrassing. I mean, that shaped me up in a hurry. I didn't want to go through that again, you know.
So it worked.
And another interesting thing, also in first grade, in May 1st, we had a class picnic. And we went out a block away, we have a forest preserve. And there was a clearing in the forest preserve where we had our little picnic. And the teacher set up a maypole, which is something you don't see anymore.
Not anymore, no.
Yeah, like in the Eastern Bloc countries, you know, I don't know if they still do it or not, but they were.
In European countries, they still do.
They still
May
do.
1st is a big
with the
holiday.
pole and the ribbons, and we'd hold on and we'd go around in the circle. And
You
that's
see
about
it
all
like
I
this?
remember
Yeah.
about, but I remember that maypole.
Oh, that's
And
a
then
lovely memory.
by the time I was in second grade and so on, they did away. I've never seen anybody sitting in the hallway with a dunce cap on after that.
So
I was probably the first and last. I don't know. And no more maypoles or anything. All that kind of like dwindled until it just faded away. So a lot of things, even as late as the early 1950s, a lot of the cultural things were still held on to, you know.
right.
But
And that is something that contributes to our diversity, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
I've read, I was at a lecture one time and they say that in 1953, there were still more books in America that's published in the United States that was not in English.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the point was that at that point in American history, in the 50s, early 50s, there were
Right.
still many Americans who can read a whole novel
Right.
in German, in French,
Right.
so in their original language. So
Right.
let's say a famous book in I guess in Sweden, let's say in Sweden, it would publish here straight without translation.
Oh, okay.
So that's
Right.
an interesting thing to consider, that Americans were not or multilingual,
Right.
or at least a big population was.
They were, yes.
Well, have you considered putting a copy of your book at a Glenview library?
I haven't, but I suppose I could see what they think.
That would be a good idea.
Okay, sure.
And
Because it has an ISBN number and everything. So
yes,
it's
there's a local
Right.
writer's shelf at the Glenview Library.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And-
I didn't even know that. Right.
And Ray, you say you moved here not too long ago? What made you choose Glenview?
2011. Well, my in-laws live here, so. And from visiting, you know, it was an attractive community, so we figured this is a nice place to live.
Yes.
So yeah, so we sold our house and we moved here. We moved into a condo and we're
And
happy.
you
know.
made some good friends through the Glenview Art League.
Oh yes, oh sure, of course.
And exhibits?
I've had a few. Journey Care, I've had, several of my paintings on exhibit there. C&M Auto, I've had, paintings exhibited there. And a few other venues. I've had one or two paintings as a collection with the rest of the members of the Art League in the book market.
Yes, yes. Those are
Right.
good venues for a local artist.
Exactly, yes, yes. So I was there in 2 separate exhibits. That's nice.
It's nice that Glenview is so supportive of the arts.
Oh, they are. They definitely are.
You can feel that.
And there seems to be a hub for writers in this area. Because like I pointed out, I live right next door to Ray de la Cruz.
Yes, who was also
He wrote the book Recuerdes de Ballesteros.
Yes, yes.
Or Ballesteros on My Mind. So we know
Mind.
about that.
Yes,
that's... yeah. And my next door neighbor told me there's another author that lives right across the courtyard from us.
You have to...
I've never met him, but she said he writes political books, and he's written 2 books at least already.
Is it Peter Nolan?
It might be. Yes. I was never introduced to him, but I'll ask my neighbor.
Yes, I hope you introduce him to me.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, right. Why, you would like to get a hold of him?
Yeah, we are always looking for writers.
Okay, all right.
Local writers.
All right.
As you know, that when you're self-published, it's not as easy to research local writers as big-time writers that are in they have their own venue for marketing, and so it's far easier to find writers are with, let's say, Penguin books, right?
Right, exactly, right.
So we like to meet people like you who just want to do it and just started writing.
Well, yes, because if you want to sell your book, writing is the easy part. Promoting it, that's the difficult part. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of your time, marketing, promoting, and I don't have time or energy for that.
Well, I think you have the personality for that.
Well,
you seem to like to meet people. I enjoy talking to people.
Really? Okay. Well, yes, one-on-one, and but I don't really have a lot of close friends because, on the one hand, talking with people like we're talking now is one thing, but I'm also a private person, very private, and I enjoy my space. I get in my zone when I'm doing my painting, and that's my other personality too. So
what are some plans you have for this year?
Keep painting.
Keep painting.
Staying healthy, having fun, enjoying life.
Do you have a certain number that you try to reach, or do you have a certain exhibit you're aiming for, or a competition?
No, not really.
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to enjoy something.
Exactly right. Just for the enjoyment, And so then I paint one painting, and then I move on to the next. Like everything else I do, been there, done that. And even when I was in the sign business, I hated repetition. I hated, repeat, where I had to repeat the same type of design or sign for a customer. Mm-hmm. I always wanted to do everything once and then move on to something else.
I see.
Then it just became labor after a while.
Mm-hmm.
See, because I was originally a hand lettering sign artist.
Yes.
And then by the 1990s, it started shifting into computerized lettering, with the vinyl lettering. And now you see the vehicle wraps and everything. But what I'm seeing today is like a shift from good layout and design to just, like a lot of your vehicle wraps. Oh, they're very interesting, colorful, a lot of pictorials on there. But what are they selling? What's the message? It kind of gets lost in all this
vehicle wraps. What is that? What do you mean?
Oh, like they'll actually wrap like a van, a business van, or even a bus.
Yes.
With advertising.
Right.
And like on a bus, for example, it has perforated holes.
That's right.
So when you see the bus as a pedestrian, you see this advertising. But from the inside, they could actually see out.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know.
So that's what you mean. The
That's
wrap.
a
And then-
vehicle wrap, right?
Yes, and
yeah.
the vehicle wraps are. You say they're too colorful that you almost can't see what's the message, right?
Well, yes. Once it became computerized, a lot of people got into businesses and franchises where they knew computers, but they didn't really have a background in graphic design.
Yes,
I would say.
or
So-
how the brain works, right? How do you
Exactly.
perceive
right.
something?
Exactly. Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Because that has a lot to do with it.
Yes.
Capturing your audience
Yes,
and knowing how.
Yes, I noticed that some advertisement is so much I say color, but then what is it like? They're forgetting to write a message or something.
Yeah.
Sometimes
It reminds me a lot of TV commercials.
Yes.
With all the background music, what are they selling? you know?
Yes.
Oh, the music's nice, but what's the product?
Right.
you know.
Oh, that's a very interesting point. Well, thank you, Ray, for being on the program.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
And thank you for watching. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.